Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Florida-friendly landscaping educational program. In today's chat, we're going to talk about how Florida-friendly landscaping pertains to those of you who are only here for part of the year, 6 months, 4 months, however long you're here. And you can definitely participate in Florida-friendly landscaping, even if you're a part-time resident here. I am Lilly Browning. I'm the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator for Hernando County Utilities. If you would like a PDF copy, a written copy of this program, or copies of all of the slides, you can email me at LillyB, LILLYB, at hernandocounty.us and say, I'd like a PDF copy of the part-time resident program that you did, and I will be glad to send that to you. So what exactly is Florida-friendly landscaping? If you're, new to this part-time resident gig here, or you're new to Florida, you may not have heard of Florida-friendly landscaping. So a basic definition of Florida-friendly landscaping is, it means low maintenance plants. That's good for a, seasonal residence. Low maintenance, we like that. And environmentally sustainable practices. Perhaps you are, you know how to do things in the best management practices, best thing for the environment in your state where you spend the summer months, the warmer months, where you may have spent, a good part of your life and your career. You've got things going down there, but you want to know how you can also have a nice yard, but in a sustainable way that is Florida friendly while you are in Florida. These 9 principles certainly apply to you while you are here in Florida, and even when you're not here, because when you're not here, your yard is still here. So you want, a piece, your little piece of the environment, you want it to be friendly towards the environment in general. One way to get started, if you have not, you want to get a hold of one of these books, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Guide to Plant Selection and Landscape Design. You can get a hold of one of these books in many ways. You can stop by the Hernando County Extension Office or the Extension Office in whatever county you happen to be in Florida, and ask them if they have copies of this book. They should give it to you for free. It's a free book. You can also go to the Florida Friendly website, put out by the University of Florida. You can download a copy of this. You wouldn't want to print it off, but you would have it, download it on your laptop or wherever. There are also phone apps, which, are cool to work with. You can find them at that same website. That way, when you're at the nursery, you can maybe put in the name of a plant and find out the information about it. You can also, speaking of nurseries, here in Hernando County, our volunteer master gardeners have a nursery where they sell Florida-friendly plants. And that is located in Brooksville near the fairgrounds. The address is right here on the slide. And they are open Wednesdays and Saturdays. It says 9 a.m. It's really more like 8 a.m. And this time of year, they're open till noon. In the hotter months, they're only there until 11. So they'll be open till noon, I would say, through probably till April or so. Then they will start, closing down at 11. This is a fantastic book to get you started. Now, you got to consider it is a book that was written for the state. So there may be some beautiful things you see on there that if you're in Hernando County, they may be only for South Florida. They may only do well in South Florida. And we're going to talk about horticultural zones in a minute. Here is another version of that same book. This is the updated version, I should say, the newest version of that book. Do not panic if you get a book that looks like the one on the slide as compared to this brand new one, because I went to Gainesville to pick up several of these and I've looked it over. I'm very familiar with the old book. It is not significantly different. The font is, they worked with formatting and font. Maybe it's a little bit easier on your eye. And there are a few plant changes. Nothing to worry about, especially if you are a beginner, because either version will get you really going. And take that to the nursery with you, look it over. Another place you can get it, where I have watermatters.org here, that is the Southwest Florida Water Management District. For those of us in one of their 16 counties, you can go on that site and order one of these, and they will mail it to your house for free. Don't be upset if they send you this older looking one, because they probably have warehouses full of those, but like I said, not significantly different, but it's a great place to start. I mentioned our horticultural zone. That's a very important thing when you're coming from somewhere else. Maybe you're coming from more of a 5, or 6 horticultural zone, totally different kind of flowers that you can grow there. The interesting thing about this horticultural zone from the USDA, this plant hardiness zone, it is based off of average cold temperatures. Now, there are other types of zones that take other things, as factors, but this USDA plant hardiness zone is based on the average cold temperature in a year. So what we're worried about is if plants, chilling hours would be one thing that some of the more northern plants, you need to consider, but what we need to consider is, will it freeze or not? The interesting thing is this zone, this map has changed since I've been showing it to you in all of my other presentations through all these years that I've been doing this. I found this one on the USDA's website, and whammo, it is a bit different. How does that affect us? I have circled Hernando County here, where most of my listeners are. Always before, Hernando County was fully engulfed in this 9A horticultural zone. Well, I guess with the updating, they realized that, they're trying to be more specific. So if you see Hernando County, this whole eastern section, so we're looking at Ridge Manor, definitely. We're looking at Massarik Town, possibly those in the Anderson Snow type area, Spring Lake. You are a different shade. You are now 9B. Also, my circle kind of covers it up, but way up in the very tippy top of the western part of the county. I'm talking way up in those zebra finch kind of area, where you on 19, almost in Citrus County, on the west side of 19. You are also being called 9B. So what does that mean? Nothing hugely significant. It does mean it may open your plant choices up a bit, because it's a little bit warmer where you are. Of course, you're going to have to take into consideration microclimates. If you spent any significant time over different seasons, where you are, what areas of your yard are more prone to freeze and what areas aren't, or if you are and your friend, a mile away isn't. So keep all those things in mind. The take home message I take from this is, I'm going to experiment more with some of those plants that, are a little more cold sensitive. Keeping in mind, when I say experiment, I'm not going to spend a lot of money. I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a palm tree that, is zoned for 10B. That would just be a foolish waste of money. A lot of the plants are just going to say 9. They're not going to differentiate 9A or 9B. But just keep in mind, especially those of you on the more eastern and southeastern part of our counties, you might, get to play with some more cold sensitive plants according to that chart. In general, though, if you're coming from up north, whether you're moving here permanently or just staying part-time, you need to consider you're not up north anymore. So you're going to have changes in latitude, changes in attitude, changes in plant attitudes. Don't have in your mind, I must have these same plants I had up north. And, speaking to seasonal residents here, you're going to get to go back and enjoy those lilacs, about when they're blooming when you go back north. But don't think you're going to grow those lilacs here. Don't think you're going to grow the tulips or the peonies. Any of those things, they're not zoned for our area. They're not going to do well here, but we have plenty of our own beauties. You're going to be here during the azalea blooming time, which is, just absolutely gorgeous time to be in the Southeast. So remember, might not have your favorites that you have up north, but we have plenty of favorites. So, change your attitude about your favorites down here. When you are thinking about having a yard as a seasonal resident, here are some considerations I want you to keep in mind. What kind of gardener are you? You're not going to want to be hands-on. You just want it to look nice so then you can go off to the pool and enjoy yourself. Here are some considerations for you. Downsize the size of yard, that you have. A lot of people come here and they downsize anyway. Most people, stay in smaller houses, mobile homes, even, recreational vehicles. That's where they want to stay. So they have a smaller area. Containers are going to work out great for you. We're going to talk about that. But if you do here and you have a yard, you can create more hardscape, more patios, more decks, more things that don't need to be cared for as landscape, soft landscape. And you can have maybe an area where you can enjoy some plants, but just get some annuals, a small space for some annuals that you switch out, and that you have the cool season annuals that you can enjoy. The fun part about that is you're going to stretch your enjoyment of the annuals, because our cool season annuals are going to be basically the spring annuals that you have up north. So you're going to get to, enjoy them even longer. I would not suggest transporting them. There are issues with doing that. You could be transporting invasive insects, diseases, things like that. So have your different, sets that you have here to enjoy and that you have in your northern areas to enjoy with your containers. But reducing the lawn area, that's going to make life way easier for you, especially when you're not here. So those are just kind of some of the things to think. I want an area that looks nice, but I'm not I'm not dying to be in the garden. I want to be off having fun. Then there's a different kind of gardener that has just got to get their hands dirty. It's for your mental health. You have to be in there gardening. That's fantastic. But consider, how much work do you want to do? How much money do you want to spend? These are all considerations. And if you get going too crazy and create all this wonderful stuff, who's taking care of it while you're away? These are very big considerations that you need to work out, for your own personal gardening plan while you spend your time in Florida. Now, when you're not here, we tend to only think about what's going on kind of in front of our face. But if you have property here and then you leave it all summer long, that property doesn't go into some homeostasis or something. There's a lot of stuff still going on when you're not there. So what's happening while you're away that is going to affect your yard? Well, the things you run away from. The sun is higher in the summer than in the winter. You know that that happens everywhere, but that may affect the different shade patterns and how much sun certain things are getting in your yard while you're gone. And guess what? It rains a lot in the summer while you're gone. That is a consideration. I mean, that is actually a good thing. That is something to be thankful for. There's certain months you might want to consider turning off your irrigation system even while you're gone. And also, The reason you're headed back up north is it's very hot and humid in the summer here. You're running, you get away from it. I know it's hot and humid up north, but a lot of people who are used to going back and forth, they spent 2020 here because of COVID, and they're like, summer is a totally different animal around here. What I'm pointing out is your plants are going to be affected by that heat and humidity as well. So it is best to follow Florida friendly principle number 1, right plant, right place. And, heat tolerant plants are the way to go. As I mentioned before, using containers is a great way to bring some, wonderful plants, bring some life into your place that you spend here in the winter. It also may help you if you have some cold sensitive plants that may be outside of the zone that you're in. You'll be able to bring them in, or in a garage or under carport and tarped, easier. This pot and pot method, what am I talking about with this pot and pot method? Basically, you take the pot as you bought it with the liner, the black pot, and you place that inside of a pretty pot. There you go. Then you can switch that out so nice and easily that way. And have fun with those containers. As you're going around on your travels, collect fun things to make into plant containers, which almost anything can be made into a plant container as long as it can hold some soil and let it drain. As I said, this helps you with the care of those cold sensitive plants. If you want to get a very, very large container like this and you think that it's going to cost a lot of money in potting soil, not necessarily, because the plants only need a certain amount of soil, probably not even half of this huge thing here. So fill up the rest with that styrofoam you got from your Amazon boxes, or empty 2-liter bottles of soda, things like that that are going to, well, make the pot a lot lighter, but also just fill in that space and then put in the potting soil. Find different kind of fillers that you can put in there for that. Here are some of the cool season annuals, as I mentioned, that you could have fun with and while you're here, and then go back up north and do it all over in the spring. As I said, transporting plants is generally frowned upon because of state to state spreading of diseases, invasive insects, things like that. So, enjoy your annuals while you're here, and they peter out, put them in a compost pile, go back up north and, do the same thing again for the annuals. The cool season annuals, we can have pansies and petunias here all winter long. I've never seen it get cold enough to affect them. So, you may have the most colorful lot in the park, or, wherever you are, because you have these wonderful pansies and petunias that you can display in hanging baskets or in pots, however you want to do it. Snapdragons do fantastic here in the winter, as well as this calendula, this pot marigold. Another thing to think of and play with there. Some more dianthus. They make so many different so many different colors of dianthus, and they're very hardy. I would even call them more like perennials than annuals. Foxglove, you can grow foxglove here in the winter. Nice, beautiful plant there, as well as the alyssum. So just some of the things to think about. And what about perennials that you keep in pots and, somehow have neighbors or whoever take care of them? These you can even put, this flax lily, you can definitely put in your yard. This and liriope, what they sometimes call monkey grass. I call that the hosta of the South, because you can fill up spaces with it and have it look good and you not have to think about it or worry about it. But to bring some color in, this Persian shield, beautiful purple leaves. And then of course we have our holiday plants, the poinsettias. It's not just to buy and then throw away here, you can actually plant them out in your yard. And I have an upcoming class about holiday plants, which will cover a lot of that. You can, I think the old-fashioned poinsettias from 40 years ago did a lot better in the yards. I think they are just, the ones we purchase now, are meant to just be a holiday decoration. You can try to plant them in your yard, and some people do have some good success. So, it's worth trying because you bought it anyway. Here are some more cool season perennials, just nice to have, in the actual dirt in your yard. This lion's ear, Philippine violets, cardinals. Absolutely love this Philippine violet. This narrow leaf sunflower, it basically is more of a late October, early November, well, through Thanksgiving type of flower. I have them and they're already starting to go down, but they're nice for, those of you who come earlier in the fall season. And then you have your climbing aster. This is beautiful. And it can, depending on where it is, some places it can get quite aggressive. Bumblebees go crazy for it. And I have a colleague who insists they smell like sugar cookies. So they have more of like a holiday feel for him. And other cool season bloomers, while you're here, February, March, those azaleas and camellias are going nuts. They're just beautiful. So that is, a great thing to consider. All different types of salvias until they get hit with, a pretty big freeze, but then they're going to come back. Kalanchoes, same thing with the freeze. Lobelia, cardinal plants. The asterisks here are indicating that these are native plants. There are some native salvias, the scarlet salvias. You can also do zinnias and geraniums. Geraniums aren't going to do great here in the warm season, but they will do fine in the cool season. And here's a little tree to think about, a Chickasaw plum, which will give you beautiful white blossoms in the early spring. Dogwoods aren't doing that great here. And I think, we just saw part of the answer. Dogwoods all over the United States have been dealing with a disease called anthracnose disease. But I think that's only part of the issue. Now, 20, 30 years ago, yes, we had dogwoods all over Brooksville, Dade City. They look beautiful, just not doing that great anymore. Let's trace back to that horticultural map, zone map I just showed you, where it's allowing some 9B into Hernando County. That is also part of the issues with the dogwoods, where they're still doing okay North Florida and northward. They need it more cool than we currently are in this cycle in life. So I think that is, one of the issues with trying to have a dogwood, just not quite cool enough in Hernando County anymore. But those Chickasaw plums, a lot of times if you're driving past a wooded area in the early spring and you think you're seeing dogwoods, no, you are seeing these Chickasaw plums, these flatwood plums. They're all in the prunus family. It's a great little tree to have in your yard. Okay, I had some seasonal residents come and actually talk to me one time a few years ago about how they can plant, what they can plant. And they were very interested in butterfly gardens. Well, if you're here in Hernando County, it does get cool. And it does get too cool to really think about butterfly gardening in the winter. And why I have here, if you want to try this, why I have used native plants only. A person doesn't need to use only native plants to attract butterflies. But in your specific situation, not being here all year long, I would like to encourage you to use native plants only in a specific pollinator type garden. Why? Because those native plants come and go with the seasons. They're going to, senesce, they're going to die down when they're supposed to. So there's not going to be as much butterfly attracting. Don't expect or encourage a spectacular display just because the weather feels beautiful and is sunny and you're enjoying it here. And you would think, oh, I would love to see all these butterflies. It's not something you really want to encourage. I'm not saying discourage, because some are going to be around. And if you happen to be a seasonal resident in South Florida, go for it. You'll do fine. But I'm talking Central and North Florida. In nature, there wouldn't be as many things out there blooming to attract them up to this area. So don't artificially attract them, because you're going to put them in danger. So basically what I'm saying is, you want to have a spectacular butterfly garden that is reserved for your summer home, wherever that may be. I'm not, and you may see some who may come to some of the plants in your yard. Just don't go out of your way to attract them. And especially, no milkweed in the winter in Central and North Florida. If you go with having native milkweed, that native milkweed is going to go down in the winter months and not be, what do they call them? A nuisance attractant, for the butterflies. If you have the non-native, which is probably what you're going to buy in the store, called tropical milkweed, Asclepias carusavaca. That is a non-native, and that's just going to keep on blooming until it freezes. If you have it, well, if you're a snowbird, I would say don't have it, because if you're a full-time resident, we encourage you to keep it cut down from about now, mid-November, through the beginning of April. If it keeps trying to come back because the weather's nice, cut it back again. We don't know when we're going to have a cold snap. And that is not, it is an unfair attractant. It's a nuisance attractant to the monarchs, when we don't want them in Central and North Florida during the cool season. And why? Let's talk a little bit about monarchs. I do have a program all about them on Hernando County Government YouTube, all about their migration patterns and everything, if you really want to hear only about monarchs. But in the monarch world, there are 4 generations a year. This is what kind of surprised me. We just kind of have in our mind this great journey that the monarchs make from up north to Mexico. That's generally what we hear about. There is a group that goes to Southern California. And there's a group that just stays in South Florida too. They don't, why go to Mexico when you can stay in South Florida? Don't think you're going to, rear this butterfly and it's going to make it to South Florida and be fine. No, it does. It can't drive I-95 and get there in a few hours. There are some issues. So with these 4 generations a year, what I always thought is the same butterfly went from Canada to Mexico. Not how it works. It's more of a relay race. It takes those 4 generations to make that entire trip. So now here's something you can do wherever you live for them. Just remember they require a roost site at night. And some of those roost sites can be pines, firs, that's for your up north home, cedars, we have the cedars. These trees have thick canopies and help regulate temperature and humidity. So the monarch is the only known butterfly to make a 2-way migration, north-south, south-north. The 4th generation on the East Coast can fly up to 3,000 miles back to their second home, to the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico each winter. But the one who starts out is not the one who finishes. It takes 4 generations to do that, like a little relay race. So here's the things I want you to really remember. in temperatures under 55 degrees. Does it get under 55 degrees in the winter months in Central and North Florida? Of course it does. Yes, it does. In temperatures under 55 degrees, monarch butterflies cannot fly well or at all. So releasing raised butterflies in this weather can be a death sentence. There are people who like to do it in the little cages and then set them free. Set them free to what? It may be too cold. They're going to end up dying, or they won't find anything to nectar on. So, you want to rear some butterflies. There are issues in that within itself. And if you watch my other program, I say, you can do a few a year for special projects with your grandkids or something, but you don't want to do that over and over and over. And it's just not healthy for them. But don't set them free, in our winter time, no matter how beautiful and sunny it is out there. And also remember right here, monarch caterpillars and their eggs cannot grow or develop properly in temperatures under 52 degrees. In Hernando County, we're going to see all winter long temperatures dip below 52 degrees very easily. So the lesson I want you to learn here is, if you're thinking monarchs and even other butterflies, don't cut your whole yard down so that they never come, but don't artificially encourage them to come while you're here. There are things you can do, and we're going to get back to pollinators in a second, but here's something you definitely can do and have a lot of fun with. Concentrate on your cool season vegetables that you can grow here. In Central Florida in December, you can transplant arugula, beets, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, Chinese cabbage, collards, endive, kale, kohlrabi, lettuce, sugar cane, and Swiss chard. You can transplant with care celery, mustard, pineapple, potatoes, and spinach. And you can start seeds for carrots, onions, bunching, English peas, radish, and turnips. So, and get containers to do that and have fun. And then, you can have fun growing your vegetables here, go up north in the spring, start all over again. But when your friends are sending you pictures of the snow outside their windows, you can send back pictures of your vegetable garden. Let's get back to those pollinators. I don't want to discourage you from being, friendly to the pollinators. That was specifically monarchs and, butterflies in general, really, that I don't want you to encourage too much in your winter yard here in Central Florida. But you can do things for pollinators. You can still be a good environmental steward in your Florida yard for pollinators, because birds, bees, beetles, and other bugs are also pollinators, and there's plenty you can do for them while you're here. One of the things is, when you get here, probably the first thing you want to do is clean up those messy beds. There's a whole movement going on encouraging people, don't do that cleanup in the fall. If you have to do it in the spring. But in the fall, don't tidy up too much, because pollinators love messy beds. Some of them are sleeping under those leaves, getting ready to come out when it's warmer weather. A lot of bees will go into the stems of, quote, quote, dead looking plants. Birds eat the seed heads from, so if your wildflowers or whatever are looking not beautiful, they are beautiful to the pollinators. So let the wildflowers go to seed. One thing a friend of mine does, we had a storm right before Veterans Day, and a few other storms, and some of the branches fall out of her trees and stuff. If they're like 3, 4, 5 feet tall, nice good branch, she'll just stick them in her native garden, and like creating a artificial snag. A snag is a dead tree left standing that just has all sorts of benefits for wildlife. Well, you're creating the same thing by just putting these branches in, some of your plant beds. That is allowing birds to perch on, allows all kinds of other activity for, some great critters out there. If you're not in an area that insists you have, a pristine yard or something, leave brush piles, lizards, squirrels, birds, and yes, snakes, that's part of wildlife too. Get a lot of benefits and use out of a brush pile. If you want to be friendly to the pollinators, you really cannot use pesticides in your yard. I mean, the two things just can't mix well. If you have to use some for some fire ants or something like that, then you spot treat only where that problem is. Don't allow a company or you yourself to broadcast spray the entire yard with pesticides and then try to attract pollinators. It's really just kind of cruel. So, keep those things in mind as well. Have shrubs and different plants that have edible things for the birds, such as berries. And you just have those out there. And yes, you can use bird feeders. That can be part of something you really enjoy. Oh, I'm not going to see many butterflies while I'm here in Florida, but I can entertain myself with birds all winter long. Use bird feeders if, put them where you can see them. But the best thing really to do is have those natural plants out there that the birds can eat from too, especially since they're used to coming to you. And then you leave, the buffet owner's up and left. Have something else out there, natural in your yard for them to get. And keep in mind that 70% of our native bees are ground nesters. That's another reason you don't want to tidy up, your plant beds too much. You'll be disturbing those ground nesters. So here are the ways that, yes, maybe butterflies aren't the thing during the winter, aren't the big show, but there's plenty you can do to help pollinators in general. And join, Audubon or other different bird tracking, touring places, take walks in the woods with them. Get to have a great time doing that. Now, again, we're going to talk about what happens when you're not around. And I mentioned before, it rains a lot in the summer, right? We don't want you to be a skeeter breeder while you're gone, so that your neighbors are getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. So here are some of the things I want you to consider. Bromeliads, yes, there are a lot of native bromeliads. Yes, you'll find them in the Florida Friendly book. But as far as mosquito control goes, it's not their favorite plant because they're going to fill up with water. This is a picture I took inside a bromeliad. When you are there with your bromeliads, full-time residents, they can work hard to flush them out every week with a hose, just get that old water out, the new water in. They can sprinkle some mosquito dunks made out of BT in there. So I would not really suggest bromeliads for your seasonal residents, simply because while you're gone, they're going to be a big mosquito attractant. Another thing we talked about, enjoying and watching those birds while you're here. Have a bird bath, that's fantastic, but put it away in the garage or somewhere where it's not going to collect rainwater, the entire time that you're gone. And go around and pick up anything in your yard that may hold water while you're gone. Tarps, on your overgrill, plant saucers, those are a big one. So while you're gone, if you're leaving containerized plants, what I would do is put them on the soil, on the ground, so they can go ahead and drain right into the soil. Those plastic or any kind of plant saucers under the pots, yeah, big mosquito attractors. So keep those things in mind. And when you are planting, because you're not here and you don't want, a jungle while you're gone, Consider when you're landscaping, using dwarf varieties and slow growers. So think small for your part-time yard. And also, as I said, we talked about having the annuals. If you're here and you like playing in your yard, you want to have places that you can enjoy. So those annuals are going to bring that color in those pots, and make you feel happy. In bigger areas, use those cool season perennials. And you want to use plants that flower in the time frame that you'll be around to enjoy them. Of course, the big rule of attracting pollinators is have things that bloom all the time. So that you might also have that, but the pollinators will enjoy them, you may not. So have a lot that bloom in the cool season. So having said that, avoid deciduous trees and shrubs. Our crepe myrtles are gorgeous, but you're not here to see how gorgeous they are. They are naked like this when you're here, and they're very attractive that way too. But why have a crepe myrtle that's going to be a naked tree when you're here, when you could have, one that is at least evergreen, or even that blooms in the time frame that you're here? So you might want to do some re-landscaping when you're here. And so if you're doing so, we're asking you to buy young plants. Young plants and trees are cheaper, obviously, and they establish faster. Establishment is important because you're not there to help with the, you wouldn't be there to help with the growing of, while it's getting established. That's why we say utilize young plants, and do that as soon as you arrive, within a week or two. So you have that time frame thinking, I want to buy a new tree for my yard in Florida. So very soon after you get here, go ahead and buy a little one, so you can keep it watered for the months that you're here, and then it should be established by then, for when you leave. Same thing with shrubs, other things like that. So this is good news that younger plants establish faster because they're also less expensive. Pruning, if you want to do some pruning while you're here, there are several things to consider. There's lots of things you can go ahead and prune for the months that you're here. But if they deciduous trees, you can prune them during the winter. But if they aren't, well, let's think about those azaleas. I said that would be beautiful while you're here. The good thing is with your time frame, that should work out well, because the azaleas will most likely bloom when you're here. And then once they drop all their flowers, if you want to prune them, that would be the time to prune them, to guarantee that you have flowers next year when you come. The latest you want to prune your azaleas is June 30th. And I know most of you are long gone by then. So go ahead and prune those before you leave. But keep frosts in mind for some of your more sensitive plants. Pruning encourages new growth. New growth is more sensitive to frosts and freezes. Generally, if it's not a deciduous plant, which we discourage pruning of those herbaceous plants and things during the time frame that you're here, just because there could be, a frost or a freeze. It all goes back to right plant, right place, meaning don't put a plant that is going to get too large for the area. Let's go back to purchasing dwarf varieties and slow growing varieties. That's going to work out best for your situation. But also don't put something that's going to overgrow its area and you're constantly pruning it. Let's go back to right plant, right place. And when you are pruning shrubs, this is just a nice little graphic that shows you basically the pyramid shape. We get so used to, and companies come around and just shear that top and move on their way. What that does is encourage all that new growth to come back at the top where you just cut off, and then no photosynthesis is happening to the leaves below. So I'm sure you've seen, even in some of your communities, whole rows of shrubs that are all fluffy and leafy at the top and dead everywhere else. That's because, the way they shear them. So the best way is to take your time with some lopping shears and do it more in this shape that allow, wider at the bottom, narrower at the top, that allows the sun to get through, so you continue to have a full looking shrub. What about tree care? Say you bought this young tree. I keep showing you young people with young trees so that you get it in your mind. You want a young tree. What, should you get for your yard? Well, you want to avoid those deciduous trees simply because they're going to be naked the entire time that you're here. And, why not enjoy an evergreen? As much as you may love flowers, and we talked about some of the flowering trees and stuff, but what if they're flowering while you're away? Not only you're not enjoying it, it's causing a mess in your yard, and you might get some nasty notes from, your association or something. If you have old, very, very old or weak trees in your yard, good idea to have an arborist evaluate them and get them removed. The other things that happen while you're away are storms. You don't want to get that phone call that the tree is on your house. So keep that in mind as well. Remove those old or weak ones with small young trees. And again, very soon after you get here, so you have those months to get it established. And while the time frame that you're here, or even while you're gone, hire an arborist for yearly maintenance to come out and do an evaluation, tell you what they feel needs done, and allow them to do that. They're the professionals. It'll be well worth the money. How can you find an arborist? If you go to treesaregood.com, that is the International Society of Arboriculture's website. Yes, I said international. But you can put in your zip code and say, I want all the arborists within 25 miles, 50 miles, whatever you set it to, and a list will come up. So then you will see, you can choose, I want this or this certified arborist to come out to my yard and give me some advice on keeping it a safe place while I'm gone, but also, one that I can enjoy while I'm here. Speaking of trees, let's talk about palms. You're in Florida, you want to be around the palm trees. I have here, because it's an old slide, remember we are in zone 9A. We just discussed that part of Hernando County has graduated to being part of 9B. Not that much difference. You still don't want a palm that is only going to grow in Miami or in the Keys. So keep that in mind. Pruning is very vital. I don't mean it's vital to prune. You don't have to prune your palms at all. What I mean is people think you do, and they often prune it incorrectly, and then that causes many issues. So we'll just start with, if someone comes to your yard and says, I'm going to hurricane prune your palms so nothing happens while you're away, hurricane pruning, not a thing. Think about the storm that we just had, in the Fort Myers area and down there, and the newsreels that you saw. In every storm we see the hurricane, the palm trees doing this, and then they do this, and then they do this. They all kind of fold up, like an umbrella. What are they doing when they're doing that in the wind? They are protecting this right here, this growing point. This is the one and only growing point of your palm tree. Here's another thing you may not know. Palms are not actually trees. They are not structurally at all created like trees. They are more in a grass family. So what does that matter? Trees have rings, we know that, and those are their growing points. Palms, not built that way. They have their cambium layers and their xylem and phloem scattered all over what we consider the trunk, more like pepperonis on a pizza. So you nick into one of those, vital growing areas, you could very much damage the plant. with a tree, it gets those hard layers out and the growing area is like inside in the inner tube, and then it puts out those hard rings. That's not how it works with palms. You can do damage, wherever you happen to cut into the tree. So also, as I said, the growing point is right here. So you cut it to what they call hurricane pruning. It has none of these, or even none of these, to help protect that growing point. You actually cause more damage than you are solving. So the best way is, this is before pruning. Nothing wrong with leaving it that way, nothing at all. But if you want to prune and you don't like the brown, skirt that it has, here's an acceptable: 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Nothing pruned above 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So you have a gumdrop shape, basically. That's the way to prune your palms. Don't go overboard doing that. Also, the palms need a very specialized fertilizer. Some people think, I just come on down and I just throw the Epsom salts on my palms, everything's fine. I mean, that's not going to hurt your palms, but that is giving it one thing, that is giving it magnesium. Palms are also in need of manganese as well as magnesium. They are in need of many different little micronutrients, actually. So the best thing is to get a palm special. And according to Jim Davis, who's the director at the Hernando County Extension, it's difficult to find what he would consider a really good palm fertilizer. So what I would do if you're here in Hernando County is give them a call at Hernando County Extension, and ask what kind of palm fertilizer is the best to use. Just remember, if your palm is picking up your fertilizer from your turf, which it's hard not to, they hate too much nitrogen. So if your palm's having an issue, it could be that it has too much nitrogen. Your lawn needs more nitrogen than your palm wants. Let's put it that way. So you might want to even consider blocking off, an area around your palm that does not get the turf fertilizer. Palms are very particular beings, and there are whole classes on those. So what about your plant beds while you're here, while you're gone? Mulch is going to keep things looking neat and tidy. So you want to use a long-lasting but a natural material. Why am I telling you to avoid cypress mulch? Well, cypress mulch is cheap, easy to find in the store. The problem with it is, you are here wanting to know how to be Florida friendly as a seasonal resident because you care for how you treat the environment. The University of Florida has found that the production of cypress mulch is not done in a sustainable way that promotes good environmental stewardship. They go into the swamps. There's no big, huge, old hardwood cypress trees left. They go into them, they take these young trees, they shred them down to put in bags and sell to us as mulch. It's not a byproduct of another industry. It's not a sustainable way of giving back to the earth. So we discourage the use of cypress mulch for that reason. Avoid rubber mulch and rocks. I know that's going to be a particular temptation for the part-time residents, so you don't have to worry that much when you're gone. Rubber mulch is going to be leaching, hard metals, petroleum, all kinds of ick, possibly into the soil. Plus it gets moved around a lot in rains. It is a heat attractant. It's not giving anything good back to your sandy Florida soil. Rocks will not hurt your soil, but they're also not giving any nutrients back. I love rocks, but I would say use rocks decoratively and in moderation. I've seen plenty of all rock yards in a particular mobile home community, around here. And I know, you're trying to avoid overgrowing or having to use too much water, but all rock yards are also not Florida friendly yards. It's not giving anything back to the soil. It is attracting an awful amount of heat, which is very stressful for the plants that you do have. And usually all rock yards have very limited amount of plants, which does not help the wildlife then. You want to avoid mulch that could bring in weeds. What I mean by that is, you'll be tempted to get it from the tree companies. Can I take that pile of chips? Sure. Well, they're just, trimming whatever they need to trim. So you could be bringing weeds in and exasperating a problem you may not have had before. What do I mean about simple lines make care easier? What I mean by that is that your plant beds itself, some people like to get real, make fun shapes and everything. With you and maybe have someone take care of it while you're gone, a nice simple shape, a nice curve, or even a straight line, but just a simple curve is going to make care around that plant bed a lot easier for those who are doing it when you're not here. And also, and I've kind of alluded to this before, that I don't want you taking even potted plants back and forth, because we've had so many issues with diseases spreading and invasive insects spreading. So there are a couple of reasons for that. Even if the same plant can live in both places, I would just suggest not carting them back and forth. Soil diseases, all, if an airplane, is not, going to let you carry it back and forth, if, like, say you're flying internationally, you have to go through, the little beagles sniffing everything. Consider that, if I wouldn't get past an airplane, or if I wouldn't get past it if I were a commercial trucker, inspection stations, then don't try and do it yourself. It's just better for the environment that you not. But also, a lot of the plants are not going to, function well, even if they appear to be the same plant, such as perhaps black-eye Susans, purple coneflowers, something like that. Well, they grow in Florida, they grow in Michigan. Why can't I take the seeds and everything back and forth? Ecotypes. There are different ecotypes, from different areas. So just keep your Florida plants in Florida, keep your northern plants up north with you. Now, all of these plants I have here, in a normal situation, I would, suggest as Florida friendly, particularly this sunshine mimosa, which is greatly blown up here, but which is a native ground cover. But for you who are not going to be in your home full time, these are aggressive spreaders that can make your life horrible. So I would suggest, see, this is perennial peanut. Here we have some bougainvillea. This is Asiatic jasmine down here, or any really kind of Confederate jasmine would be the same way. If they present themselves as very aggressive spreaders, that might not work for your lifestyle when you're not around all the time to control it. And Florida friendly landscaping is a bit different than xeriscaping, but here's one of the principles that, Florida friendly picks up from xeriscaping is place those plants with like water needs together. That's going to be very important for you, so that, all those who are going to do fine on natural rainfall, maybe keep in one place, and maybe those that need to be on a micro irrigation system of some sort, put all those together as well. Now, here's something you want to think about, and it kind of goes into those aggressive spreaders, especially if it's a vine. Around your house, particularly, this is not necessarily a horticultural thing, but it is a safety thing for you. You don't want to have so much vegetation around your house and yard that you're providing hiding places for ne'er-do-wells, perhaps such as this guy here, when you're not around. So keep those shrubs trimmed to a reasonable, height and length. When you're here, you don't want to see your neighbors or something, come up with some, temporary screening that you can maybe take down when you're not here. Or you can even think about using thorny bushes along the back where someone might want to try and sneak in to get into your house. Make sure your plants are not blocking the security cameras or won't grow to block the security cameras while you're away. Motion detector lights, I think most people use, a lot of those. That's a good thing to have when you're not around. And here's something that's not necessarily related to crime, but it's just not something you want to have around. When you have that arborist come out, have them check that it is not possible to have a conveyance or a walkway or runway from a tree to your house, to your roof and your attic. That way you can avoid some roof rats or squirrels, raccoons, anything that might want to make a home in your attic when you're not there, when you're there, however. Also, you might want to think hard about having fruit trees. I know I said to have berries and stuff for the birds, but actual fruit trees, mangoes, citrus, avocados, that you would love to have around while you're down here in Florida. Think about, if their harvest time is when you're not here, and those things are going to end up on the ground, that is just going to attract a lot of vermin. So all these things to think about. Now your lawn, we mentioned, lawns are a big, high maintenance, high dollar thing to take care of. So you might want to consider reducing that lawn size. And if there's an area where your lawn just never really wanted to grow anyway, reinvent that. Here they created this nice path walkway and these different shrubs, because it's in the area between houses that the irrigation never gets correctly or it's too shady. Just think about that. Now, here's something that's very important for all lawn owners in general, but it's something you will have to make sure that you get a hired professional while you're gone who understands this and follows this rule for you. 4 inches, no lower. Do not mow that lawn lower than 4 inches. That is vital to the health of your lawn. And if you don't want to pay us at Hernando County Utilities a lot of water, if you're gone June through September, turn it off. Nature's going to water that lawn for you. But during those other times, your lawn only needs 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of water per watering event. We have different classes and different ways. I can even email you to tell you how you can figure out if it's putting out that amount. And what do I mean by let your lawn tell you when it needs watered? When you're here in the winter, it's unlikely to need watered that much. You can even skip a week of water due to the shorter daylight hours. It's just not actively growing. But if you're still here in April, May, when your lawn starts folding in half, not your lawn folds in half, the lawn blades fold in half, and you walk across and the footprints remain there for a while, what that means is on your next watering day, if it doesn't rain before then, go ahead and give it some water. That's how it's telling you, I need water now. Don't really need to do that before that. And speaking of your watering days, these are the watering restrictions for every single person who has a home in Hernando County. Even if they have a private well, even if they draw water out of a surface body of water, these are restrictions for everyone. So keep that in mind. And also I'm going to let you know, we have done some hiring in Hernando County, and there will be very soon 2 dedicated code enforcement officers whose entire jobs will be to watch how people are watering, to make sure that they're watering the proper days and times. And if you are not, you will be cited. These 2 individuals will work through the night and they will work on weekends. Spread the word to all your neighbors. So your established trees and shrubs, leave them alone. They don't need to be on supplemental irrigation. As I said, in the winter, you can skip a week. Did you check that time clock when the time changed? Go out and do that as soon as this is over. Is your rain sensor working properly? Is it underneath? Not going to do any good there. Has a tree limb grown over it? Is it sideways and not up there properly? Go out there and check that. And also, before you leave for going up north, make sure you have your rain sensor on active. It's going to rain a lot while you're gone. So you don't want your system watering when nature's doing that for you. And check that battery of that rain sensor if it is a wireless one. There are some really cool there's new technology coming out, even regarding irrigation and irrigation, clocks and all that. So you could get a soil moisture sensor. What that does is you have it buried in the ground and it will let the system know this soil's really dry, you should turn on. Or this soil is fine, don't turn on. And you can get it with with smart irrigation, an envirotranspiration controller as well. And so the location, setup, and calibration are the key to achieving good performance with these smart controllers. And this comes from Frank Galdo, who was the Florida Friendly Landscaping agent in Pasco County, and now he still works in water for Pasco County Utilities. So he knows a lot about this. Get it all set up well before you leave town, so any needed adjustments to calibration can be identified and corrected. Many new controllers have internet and Wi-Fi connectivity, meaning you can monitor the system and adjust programming no matter where you are. So here's her, this lady sitting in Michigan or wherever and says, oh, it's raining in Spring Hill. I'll just turn my irrigation off with her smart app there. So just remember what Frank says here. Flow sensors, that's what you're getting with that system, are getting cheaper each year, but leaks are not. So if you get this flow sensor, you can even potentially detect unusual increases in flow rate that would indicate a possible leak, a broken head, etc. So, we're getting, these smart programs for our home security and everything else. Why not get it for our irrigation system as well? Because here's what a leak looks like, what one looked like in 2017 in Hernando County. Kind of ugly, icky this way. This was an irrigation leak. I'll show you something uglier though. This is someone's actual bill who had an irrigation leak. So in January of 2017, well, let's say in December of 2016, they used, what this means, it's hard to read, so I'll read it to you, 9,200 gallons of water, and their bill was $20.29. January, they had a leak. They used 218,000 gallons, 218,700 gallons of water, and their bill was $2,606.76. That's what's really ugly. If you even suspect you have a leak, get that taken care of. Get an irrigation contractor out there. I guarantee you it'll be cheaper than this. Having said that, if this happens to you, don't have a heart attack and fall over, in your driveway. Hernando County Utilities offers once a year adjustments if something traumatic like this happens to you. So call customer service, work out, a deal with them to adjust that bill, but you only get those once a year. And it only is if it's an underground leak. There are all these different rules, and you have to use more than 50,000 gallons to qualify. And you'll probably have to make a good faith payment while they assess whether or not, you get an adjustment in your bill. But that's customer service at Hernando County Utilities that you would contact for that. Fertilizing, that is definitely, an issue that you need, but what you need to know is that while you're here, basically January 1st through March 31st, homeowners are not allowed to fertilize their Florida lawn by county ordinance, and I'll show you that in the next slide. You do want to avoid weed and feed products. I know they're out there in the store. The University of Florida does not recommend them for Florida lawns. First of all, if you want to try and get a hold of those spring weeds, you want to do that maybe in February. That's not the time when you're allowed by ordinance, nor is it recommended that you fertilize. There has been non-target kills of things like palm trees and other things with these weed and feed products that get into the soil system. We just don't recommend them at all. But just remember, while you're here, yes, we are under the no fertilizer rule for homeowners, but it's not a time when you need to worry about fertilizing your lawn. If you're going to leave in May or so, go ahead and get it one fertilization in April, if that's what you want to do. We are not up north. We have plenty of lime in the soil. You don't need to sweeten your soil with lime. Wait till you go up north to do that. You want to follow the ordinance. Here it is. No fertilizer from homeowners, January 1st through March 31st. Professionals are allowed to fertilize your lawn using slow release only. But here's the thing, as I just mentioned, it's not the recommended time. So why the county allowed professionals to have some leeway is really, and the University of Florida will tell you to start around March 15th. You as a homeowner, your lawn can wait till April, but people, running companies that have a lot of lawns to do, they wanted to give them that extra time starting around March 15th to start getting all their customers' lawns fertilized. Dr. Lester, county extension agent here, will tell you if you have a company out there fertilizing in January, fire them. It's just not the time to do it. You'll probably experience some freezes while you're here. This is a good way to cover those sensitive plants outside. Like I said, keep them in pots so you can put them in the garage or someplace, a little safer. But if they are outside, these boxes, even this recycling bin, works great to create tents to protect them. Here's what not to do. You don't want to create lollipops out of your trees, out of any of your plants. The reason we cover them, what we are accomplishing, we're not like, see, I have this sweater on, so I'm not cold because I'm a mammal. I generate my own heat. Plants do not generate their own heat, no matter how many layers you put on them. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. What we are trying to accomplish is capturing the ground heat. We're not going to have permafrost here. If it's 18 degrees outside, your first few inches of soil might get to 48 at the coolest. The further down you get, it's going to be 70 degrees, down there. So what we're doing by covering the plant is trying to capture that radiant heat from the ground, trying to tent it in. So ideal is like one of these little tents here that hopefully is not touching the plant at all. That's ideal. It's not always feasible. So you want to get a cover, covers the whole thing and touches the ground, even put bricks or something to hold it down to capture that heat in. That's what we're trying to accomplish. You see your neighbors wrapping things up like lollipops, they're not really accomplishing anything. The other thing is to take those off. Photosynthesis still is a thing. Don't leave them on for days and days and days at a time. And here's what people, they want to come down and see everything green all the time. If you want to see everything green all the time, come in the summer. You're going to suffer from the heat, but you're going to see all the green things, just like up north. Having what I call a golden lawn. It's not brown, it's not straw covered. colored. It is a golden lawn. Having that will, it's okay. It's winter. It's all right. Your lawn is okay. So here is, if you're thinking of hiring someone, there are, and this is also for your, different associations. So this again is something that Frank said, talking to homeowners associations, providing the right care at the right time, fertilizing appropriately, managing pests responsibly, and I didn't even get into that, keeping the irrigation system running efficiently. These are some of the benefits of hiring qualified landscape professionals. And the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program has developed several helpful resources to make it easier to hire landscape professionals who have been trained in Florida Friendly landscaping. So keep your landscape looking its best by hiring the best with the following contract template and guide. And the University of Florida has a whole website about finding professionals who have been trained like this, and also training for the professionals. So here are some of the places that you can find that online. Here are some other resources as well. Whoops. I'm trying to move. There's a thing here you can't see that's in my way. But some other resources that I have used. Here's that guidelines for hiring a Florida Friendly landscape professional. Here's the website. Here is the Florida Friendly landscaping website in general. And if you go to Hernando County Government YouTube, I have going on 100 videos there. Just look for the playlist for Florida Friendly landscaping. So there is where you're going to find pest control, which I didn't cover here. Pollinators, the milkweed one I talked about, the monarch one I talked about. Everything you always wanted to know about your Florida lawn. 20 things newcomers need to know about their Florida landscape. That's the place to go to continue to educate yourself. And I would like to thank, I got a lot of this information from the Indian River County Extension Office, Manatee County, Frank Galdo, who, as I said, he had my job in Pasco County. Now he's still working, caring for water in Pasco County Utilities, as well as this particular snowbird from St. Lucie County, who may or may not be my sister. Also, here's someone I've never got to thank before. I thank him, but I'm letting everyone see him now. This is the man behind the YouTube. This is John, and this is the person who gets these videos that I make and transfers them up onto Hernando County Government YouTube. He usually does it very expediently, always does it very expediently. And weirdly enough, I'm not the only thing he has to do. County commissioners and all that have stuff for him as well, but he's definitely one of my silent partners who really helps get the word out. So I appreciate John and all that he does for me and for Hernando County. Here are some of the upcoming classes that we have. Next week, I'm going to have an in-person class. I will not be, virtual. We'll be having a rain barrel and compost bin workshop. If that interests you, please email me. It's for Hernando County residents only. I will be at the Spring Hill Library the following Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon, talking about the care of holiday plants. And then I'll be back virtually on the 21st, Florida Friendly Container Gardening for Ornamentals. I had to reschedule that. It was supposed to be earlier. So since I have rescheduled it to December 21st, I am going to add a bit of this care of holiday plants into the container gardening class. Then in January, we're going to start up with Hernando's water rules. It is more than just one day a week that you can water. It actually is, quite interesting for if you want to know more about that. And then I'm going to be doing this very class again. If you have friends who may not have come down yet, they can always watch it on Hernando County Government YouTube. But if they don't want to do computers at all, I'll be doing it in person at the Spring Hill Library on January 11th at 2:30. All righty. Here are the different resources where you can find out information. Facebook, YouTube. I'm even on Twitter and Instagram, so you can find out about all the different programs coming up. Oh, and here again is my email. So if you have any questions you would like follow up with, or would like a PDF copy of this, then here is my email, LillyB, 2 L's in the middle, at hernandocounty.us. And thank you for joining us. I know many of you didn't get to see the beginning. So, you know, go back. It's going to be on YouTube. I'm sorry, it'll be on YouTube within a week or less time. It'll be on Facebook this afternoon. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will turn off the recording for now. And thank everyone for joining this program. And those of you who are here live, stick around and you can put your questions in the chat. Thank you, and everyone have a wonderful Florida-friendly day.